Hello and welcome to this summary of our class for Monday, March the 25th, the first class back at school after spring break. The main thing we did on the 25th is screen and discuss a short 20-minute documentary film by an Israeli filmmaker named Iris Zaki. It's Iris is Iris, Zaki is Zaki. The link to her documentary, which is called Natural Born Settlers, is in the writing assignment for April the 17th. It will be due April the 17th. This is a writing assignment about this short documentary that I'm asking you to work on. The documentary takes a look at what the lives of settlers on the West Bank, Israeli Jewish settlers on the West Bank, are actually like. Iris Zaki is a resident of Tel Aviv in Israel, and she is not sympathetic at all with the position of the settlers. Rather than running, though, from their perspective, she decided to lean into her lack of comfort with the settlers' worldview and actually move into a settlement for 2 months, which she did in the summer of 2016. It is about this period of 2 months that Iris Zaki made this short documentary. Now, it's interesting, the documentary is interesting for a number of reasons, not the least of which is her method of getting people to actually talk to her. She doesn't do traditional interviewing of the kind that you are used to seeing in documentaries. So you'll want to watch for that. What I'd like you to do is follow that link in the writing assignment that you'll find on Blackboard. You'll also find the writing assignment in your email, because at the time that I posted the writing assignment, Blackboard was down. This was during spring break. So you will also perhaps have already found the writing assignment in your email. It's the very same thing in Blackboard. Follow that link. Watch the documentary very carefully, and you'll need to watch it multiple times. One of the things that I want to pause over just a moment and emphasize is how you go about documenting the views of multiple people when you're reading multiple texts, wherein writers represent different viewpoints, or you're watching a film in which multiple speakers, in this case interviewees, are representing multiple viewpoints. How do you capture that? Well, the result of your compare and contrast papers, where I asked you to read the views of David Grossman and Amos Oz and A.B. Yehoshua on the conflict, suggested to me that you read through them maybe once or twice and then just started typing. Tried to remember what you could and then bluff your way through the rest. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's not going to be sufficient, and I discussed this in class. But perhaps part of it's my responsibility as well. I assumed that you had written compare and contrast projects before, and I didn't set out a particular methodology for you to use. And I went through this kind of methodology on Monday the 25th. The idea is simply this. You must make a table, a chart. You must, whether you do it in Excel or whether you do your chart on hand-drawn 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, whatever your preference is, you must make a chart with two axes, an x-axis and a y-axis. Down the vertical axis, you need to put the names of the people whose writing you're reading, or the names, in the case of the documentary, of the interviewees whom you are listening carefully to as part of the film. Then the the horizontal axis at the top of your table becomes, as you go across, a listing of each issue or each subject, each topic that is brought up in the course of in this case, the interviews that Iris Zaki does with her subjects. You must do the tedious work of watching the film multiple times and capturing what these individuals have to say about the various topics they broach in their comments to Zaki. This will take some time. That is part of the process, learning the discipline of putting in the work that it takes to capture the relevant information so that you then can put together a coherent writing project that doesn't simply try to bluff your way through by remembering what you can and then kind of letting the rest just slide. That's not the behavior of a diligent, excellent student, and the students in my classes can do much better than that. But they also need a methodology to use, and hopefully I've now provided that. Create a table, create an x-axis and a y-axis. Along one axis, you list the people whose works you're reading or the people who are being interviewed. And across the other axis, you put the issues or topics that are brought up in the readings or the interviews. And as you go through the text, whether they're spoken or written, you do your documentation. Then you can begin to answer the questions in a particular assignment. Read this particular writing assignment carefully. I am presenting some very specific questions that I would like for you to write about, that I'd like for you to think about. Very important, do not write a summary. In the case of the 3 Israeli writers' papers, some of you just wrote summaries. Well, this person said this, and this person said this, and this person said that, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. That's not the idea. If you write a summary of what Iris Zaki's interviewees have to say, your project will bounce back to you. That's not a good idea. It's not something that you want to have happen this late in the semester. This project will be due April the 17th. By the time you give me that and you get a mark back, my comments back on your document, it will be getting uncomfortably close to the end of the semester if you have to go back and revise the work extensively at all. So do the hard work, do the tedious work of information capture up front before you ever start writing. All right, very good. Now, as I was saying a moment ago, read the assignment very carefully. I do list a number of questions that I want you to address as part of your project. Do not set up your project so that you have a question and then an answer and a question and an answer. Do not do that. These questions that I'm posing in the assignment are things that I want you to respond to as part of the project. But you decide the structure you want to use, so that all of those topics, the questions that I ask for you to think about, emerge in a fluent, rational, coherent progression of thought. Right? So, new subject, we're going to be turning on Wednesday, the 27th, to more of the Palestinian short stories that are assigned. You are responsible for having read all of the Palestinian short stories that are provided to you in a PDF on Blackboard by Monday, I believe it's April the 1st. And no, this isn't an April Fool's joke. You're responsible for having read all of those. You had the chance to read them during spring break or read during this first week back. You had the choice, and I hope you chose to get some work done during spring break, so you don't have to read quite so much this week. In any case, these stories are not long, and I think you will enjoy them. They're very different from the Yehoshua and the Yejar stories that we've read so far. Obviously, because they're Palestinian, and the perspective and the style is completely different. Okay, we'll even talk about some very interesting translation issues in class on Wednesday. If you are in my section 11, the afternoon class, you will have a quiz on the stories on Monday, April the 1st. If you're in the morning class, you will not, so long as you do the reading and demonstrate that you have done the reading. We may begin to discuss these stories in depth on Monday. On Wednesday, we will go back over our discussion of the Emil Habibi story. At last, the almonds blossomed. And then we will go on to Liana Bader's story, Extracts from a Land of Stone and Time. And then we will pick up with the balance of the stories, 4 or 5 stories after these 2 stories on Monday the 1st. I hope this has been helpful. Appreciate you watching. Take care. See you next time. Thank you.